What do white people mean when they say, "Show me the real Africa"? What is this real Africa? It's a combined myth of all the narratives, some of them pure fantasy, of an Africa that is untouched, uncorrupted by foreign influences. A myth that real Africa is a place of mud huts, naivety, a total lack of technological capability, surrounded by a dangerous wild wilderness, of dark, disease-filled jungle, or sometimes uncultivated grasslands. Because no real African is a capable farmer, that are filled with wild antelopes, lions, and other dangerous beasts. But because most of these narratives describe a primitive, unsophisticated place with less capability than those places and cultures that are controlled by white people, the reality of African cultures does not match this myth that has been created by white people. This mythological idea of real Africa and the real Africans that live there feeds directly into the fantasy that non-Africans are white people who are or come from a place that is inherently better than Africa. When there is a mismatch between those fantasy expectations and reality, this can cause severe dissonance for people who want to think of themselves as white. It causes confusion, as the word just doesn't make sense to them, because none of their ideas about how things should work are matching the reality that they are experiencing. For those people, looking for real Africa is an attempt to resolve that dissonance. Resolve it in a way that fixes their confusion, but also still maintains their self-esteem, validating the idea that they are still white people and are still better than Africans. They don't try to make things make sense by changing their model of the world, because their self-esteem is tied to the denigration of Africa. The reason that these people's self-worth is bound to this myth is because the narratives that support it were intentionally created by the European 1% to control their own people, to not rebel and demand more from their masters. Because at least you are not black, African. So be grateful for the scraps we have given you to live off, whilst we have an amazing standard of living of the wealth that you create for us. People who desperately want to think of themselves as white are angry and resentful. Resentful every time there is an indication that Africans are not less than them, because it will undermine their self-esteem and show that white is better is a lie. They don't want reality. They only want evidence that supports narratives that build and maintain their self-esteem around being white people. Even if they personally don't have much money, wealth, power, or capability, at least the people that they come from and are part of are white, are better than Africa. Because their self-esteem is so tied to these ideas, they will actively defend those ideas until their self-esteem about who they are is bound to something else. What is often forgotten, particularly about Europeans, is that people from these cultures were themselves colonized. The colonizers told these people that their own native cultures and traditions were less and should be left behind as primitive. The colonizers created systems of control, and the ordinary European person had to submit to their domination so they were not totally pushed aside and still had some access to the resources that were stolen from them. Europeans were required to communicate in the colonizers' language: French, Old Farsi, Greek, Latin, or Arabic. These people had to replace their gods and look down on anything that was purely their own as primitive, so that they would not be bullied, dominated, and oppressed, although the oppression still happened anyway. And as the European 1% started extending their conquering practices outside of Europe, they got their minions to follow them by saying, "Be more like us, or try to, and we will let you live. And you should look at Africans as being less than you, because then you can see that you should be satisfied with what little of your own we have allowed you to keep." As these people then began kidnapping people from Africa and shipping them around the world, African became black. And European Americans were encouraged to think of black people as less and think of themselves as white people to maintain the control that the European 1% had over the European Americans and maintain the economic system of making money through keeping Africans enslaved. So, how should you deal with all of the cultural and psychological baggage of these people? The mental baggage that European heritage people try to put on you when they visit Nigeria, or when you are in a conversation with them abroad, and you start talking to them about our homeland, or Africa in general. What would you say in response to a person acting confused by what they see in front of them, and then saying to you, "Show me the real Africa"? If it was a Kenyan person saying, "Show me the real Nigeria," when you are actually showing them Nigeria, you would treat them as though there was something slightly wrong with them. Because can't they see what you are putting in front of them? You wouldn't expect a Tanzania person to treat you as though you are merely ignorant if on your first visit they gave you a tour of their capital city and you kept saying, "No, this can't be right. Show me the real Dodoma." These people who call themselves white people are pretending to be ignorant and lacking in understanding. Yet you treat this behavior as normal, just because it is a weird Oyibo person doing it. And of course, white people don't know about Africa, so everything has to be explained to them. It might be true that they may not know anything, but do they actually show curiosity when you show them things, or explain Nigerian culture to them? Or do they pretend that it doesn't make sense to them, when to anyone else it would be obvious? This is because they are not actually curious about Nigeria. They are looking for something else, something very specific. They are looking for something that validates the idea, the model that they already have in their head of what Nigeria should be. Normal tourists would be curious about what they see in front of them. But these people act confused by what they see in front of them. A genuine person would be trying to find ways to match what they are experiencing with something similar in their own lives, and would then want to discuss this similarity. But these people are constantly comparing what they see with a pre-existing story in their heads, and are then confused when reality doesn't match that narrative. If you start treating this confusion as utter ignorance on the white person's part, when they don't seem ignorant about other things, you will end up attempting to justify the normality of your own life and the lifestyle of Nigerians that you are showing them. You will end up having to explain your own life as though it is somehow exceptional and not real, compared with the expectations that the white person is expressing to you through their confusion. Oh, you have working traffic lights. How should I eat this cooked snail? Is there something special I need to do? And French people consider snails to be a delicacy in their own country. What is this? How should I eat this stockfish? Stockfish is European food, Norwegian, not Nigerian. Do they explain their own country to you when you visit their countries? Do they spend time explaining why it makes sense that the Reichstag in Germany exists, why there even is a Buckingham Palace, why it is true that the Arc de Triomphe in Paris really was made by French people and not made with any foreign assistance, despite it looking so impressive? This behavior by people you call Oyibo is not just one of those weird Oyibo things that they do. We know it is not normal, but it has become so common that we normalize it. I was in Nigeria a few years ago with a European heritage friend of mine who was visiting. And the Nigerians who we met kept saying to me behind his back, "This Oyibo guy is strange. He is not behaving like the other ones. He is being respectful. He is acting normal." I told them, yes, he is not trying to be white to you and act better than you. And these people know the uncomfortable feelings they get because of the dishonors of not feeling like white people, even if they don't want to admit it. Again, a while ago, I was discussing with a European heritage person in the UK about the time they had visited Nigeria. They said that they didn't really like the cities in Nigeria because of the behavior of the people, but they did like the villages because the people there were nicer and much more welcoming. I smirked at them, knowing what was actually going on, and responded, "Yes, I understand. The people in the countryside hadn't necessarily met a European before, and so you got to feel like a white person to those people. But the people in the cities didn't actually have time for you." The person I was speaking to didn't refute me, but instead, they started looking a bit ashamed of themselves and started trying to leave the conversation because they knew that I was right. This behavior by Oyibo people is the same behavior you see when your distant cousin comes to a family gathering and then sneers at your mother's cooking or turns their nose up at a dish you serve them, saying, "Oh, we don't eat stuff like this where we come from. This is interesting." If your cousin was doing this, then you would think they were being pretentious towards you and trying to say that they are better than you. So treat the Oyibo people doing this the same way you would if it was your distant cousin doing it. They are not foreign and people who just don't know. These people are trying to signal to you that they are somehow better than what you are presenting to them. They know they are not better than this, but they are attempting to get you to accept that they are better than you because they have already been told that you are naive and will treat yourself as less than any Oyibo person. And therefore, Because you are Nigerian showing them Nigeria, they are attempting to get you to accept their positioning of you as less than them through pretending to be ignorant and incapable of understanding things. This is the only special Oyibo thing that they are doing, trying to get you to agree that you are less. Don't be too concerned though that you haven't seen and recognized this behavior of them for what it is. They have spent a long time selling themselves and their culture to you as other and better. Nigeria does not have European studies departments in our universities that teach European culture to Nigerians, that teach us what the cultural mannerisms of Europeans actually mean and what they are really thinking when they act in certain ways. Unfortunately, we only teach ourselves about Europeans from what they themselves tell us. And we don't teach our children to see what the equivalent meanings are in our own culture when they act differently. Even more unfortunately, these foreigners do have African studies departments in their own universities. They study our cultures to ensure they can understand us, but we don't study them with the same intent. This puts us in a very vulnerable position when negotiating, or sometimes when just interacting with them. Their pretend ignorance about how we behave is a lie. They probably learned about that in school. The ignorance and confusion that they are exhibiting is an attempt to corner you or to find reasons to treat you as less than them, just like your distant cousin would, or a fellow Nigerian when playing status games. So don't let them get away with this. That slightly uncomfortable, nervous smile you get as they declare how wonderful it is to experience the uniqueness of Nigerian culture, ordinary life, is what you think it is. Someone being supercilious and condescending. Treat their games just like you would another Nigerian attempting to be condescending to you. Do it right back at them. After all, they wouldn't be trying so hard at this if they didn't secretly fear that actually they are the one who is less than you. So don't be shocked when these people constantly ask you, where is the real Africa? Or insist that only places with poor people are authentically Africa. Because they are looking for the Africa that their self-esteem and self-worth is tied to. Their ideal real Africa, where they can lie to themselves that they are white. The real Africa, where they can finally get to be white people. That is the Africa that they are looking for and want you to show them. All the reality that you are showing them is reminding them that they are not white. And know that refuting their expressed attitudes and behavior as though they are coming from a place of ignorance will not result in any change. Because ignorance of Africa is not a problem for them. It is a benefit. Because it maintains their self-esteem as feeling like white people. So the uncomfortableness or apparently willful disbelief every time you explain or show them what Africa or Africans are really like is all because they don't want you to be telling or showing them, because it makes them feel bad about themselves. Sometimes it can just be your very presence that makes them not feel white, because you don't match the delusionary ideas in their heads of what real Africa should be like. When interacting with you, they will not be seeking understanding. They will be looking for anything that validates the framing that you and your culture, as a representative of real Africa, is less than them. So when a Nigerian declares anything foreign as better than Nigerian, or anything Nigerian as not working well, this will be used against you as validation that the European in front of you is better than you, and that you think of yourself as less. because now they have confirmation from you that, yes, they are white. So how should Nigerians refute the myth of the white persons? Real Nigeria or real Africa? You should treat their ignorance, their willful denial, in a particular way. Not just the ordinariness of someone not knowing, but as someone who is genuinely a bit incapable and dim-witted, not able to understand because they lack the meta capability. When you do this, implying their stupidity, but not directly declaring it, the only possible refutation of their stupid ignorance will be to accept the reality that you are telling them about or showing to them. However, don't expect them to like this experience of having their whiteness, their denigrating view of you, being taken away from them.